Good morning and welcome to Onward in Love and Caregiving. I'm Greg Johnson. I'm the president and CEO of GJP International, which is Greg Johnson Partnerships International. And here in New York, I have the great privilege of serving as the chief advisor to the CEO of Emblem Health for family caregiving. And I want to welcome you particularly to this broadcast. This broadcast marks the 200th, I can't believe it, the 200th broadcast of Onward in Love and Caregiving. Earlier, we had called it by a different name, but all of these are there and available on our YouTube channel. And during the last 8 weeks, I have been doing rather purposefully in mind a retaping or a retelling or a resharing of something that I did many years ago. I think many of you know my story, but I'm just going to share just a little bit of the beginning because it's the great gift that came to my life. It was truly the invitation to the ministry that I had always wanted. Yes, I have been blessed to serve at the Marble Collegiate Church in the Word and Sacrament. I have loved and adored every minute. But my real ministry has been and continues to be the world of family caregiving. And it was begun at Emblem Health here in New York City. And I have been a blessed, not only member of Emblem as a human being, but as a member, as an employee, and now as a consultant for the last many years under the brilliant leadership of our CEO, Karen Ignani, to whom I am endlessly grateful. A very powerful, a very creative, and an enormously caring woman. We are blessed. And where did it all begin? Well, I was invited. It was after that period where I'd had some strokes and I was learning to walk yet again, as I seem to be doing right now. And I was invited to lunch with the then chairman of the foundation, a friend of mine, a minister whom I had known for many years, the very highly loved and respected Dr. Carl Flemister. Carl and I had known each other for a very long time, and we would talk together. We had lunch together, and he would share what they were doing. I would share what I was doing, and he was always unbelievably supportive and had an enormous belief in the calling that I knew I had for ministry. And he began to tell me how they very much wanted to create a program for family caregivers. And I'm sitting there talking with him and saying, this is great. This is a brilliant idea, Carl. I think it's wonderful. And he looked at me and he said, no, Greg, I want you to do it. And I said, Carl, I know nothing about insurance. He said, we'll teach you that. And I'm still learning and very grateful for that. But I said to him, you know, Carl, what really excites me about this, and it has always from the very beginning, and it shaped my thinking of how I proceeded. And that was, I said to him, you know, as a minister, it's very interesting that you're telling me all of this about the family caregivers, about them being really the silent patients, and yet the backbone of the healthcare systems of the world, all of which you've heard me talk about now many, many, many times. I said, but you know what really makes me extremely interested in this opportunity is the fact that as a clergy person, I have buried more caregivers than care recipients. And I said, if there's anything I can do in any way whatsoever to help change that dynamic, that paradigm, count me in. Well, little did I know, it's now 23 years, and I am passionately involved and given the platform and the support through this wonderful organization of Emblem Health, who has allowed me to take this beyond where we began. Our initial mission statement remains keeping caregivers, not creating more care recipients. And I was asked to bring attention to the employees, to the members, and our partners, and to the world at large. Well, as you all well know, I am now traveling, or I have been, to many parts of the world telling the Emblem Health story. And that story really is the last 7 weeks, plus what we're going to talk about in this session today. We've entitled that originally, Yana, You Are Not Alone. And I taped that many years ago, probably about 13 years ago. And I'll never forget it because it was the first thing that I taped live without a script. I just did it. And after the strokes. And so I had no idea if I was going to be able to do it or not. And I taped all 8 of them in one very long afternoon with a fabulous camera crew and a change of costumes. So it looked appropriate. Of course, we have to do that. But it was a very exciting experience. They were much shorter than this series has been. But they gave the overall Caregiving 101. And I can't tell you how many times I've used that. And now that's available on YouTube. You are not alone. You go to our YouTube channel, Family Caregiving with the Rev. And for those of you who aren't as comfortable, all you need to do is, if I can do it, you can do it. You go on www.youtube.com. And then you type in there's the word search, and you put in Family Caregiving with the Rev. And my picture appears. And click on it. And it's the second group. It's the second series, You Are Not Alone. They're very helpful, and they're things that you can use for yourself, certainly, but also if you're working with someone. I have used them again and again when I have been asked to speak to someone. And I will get some idea of what the topic might be. But in order that I can maximize our time together, I will often send to the person 1 or 2 of the videos. They're only 8-10 minutes long. And simply say, please take a listen to this before we talk, because it will help prepare you so that we can have a conversation that truly talks about resolutions and things that can be very helpful to you. Well, now, when I decided in January of 2023 to go back and do a review, we've done this before, but I've not taped it in quite the same way. This year, I have taped it so that as of today, once this broadcast has been done, we will have Yana 2023, meaning You Are Not Alone 2023. And what is that about? It's an introduction to family caregiving, a conversation in family of origin, family of choice, a discussion of the many faces of family caregiving, and then a look at you and a look at me as we also consider our care recipient. We are physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual human beings, and they all combine, and they all help us on what it is, that ultimate journey that each of us is going to go through, or we're going to be kicking and screaming all the way. It's the journey from ego to essence, going deeper within. And then last week, we did a program on death, dying, and grief. Too often, that is not considered part of the dynamics of family caregiving. It is an extremely important consideration, because otherwise, what do we end up with? We end up with a lot of codependent people who jump from one caregiving situation to another, to another, to another. I call them serial caregivers. It's wonderful. They mean well. But who are they not looking at? Themselves. So their needs, as there has been a finality to the human life, perhaps of the care recipient, not always, but many times, the caregiver needs to take time to process, takes time to slowly go from whatever their emotions be to surrender and on to gratitude. Such an important word. And now today, we're going to be talking about the gifts of family caregiving. Yes, it's very difficult. Yes, it's emotionally draining. Yes, we think, oh, we can't possibly do this. And yet we've just done it, perhaps. Perhaps we're doing it. Perhaps we're about to. And of course, I cannot help but think of, when I say that statement like that, of the very great First Lady of Family Caregiving here in America, Mrs. Rosalind Carter, who at this moment is caregiving for her husband in hospice, President Jimmy Carter. We owe that woman a great deal, and her wonderful Rosalind Carter Institute for Caregiving down in Georgia. Many of us have had the privilege of being there, of speaking there, of participating. They do excellent work, and I have recommended and talked about that on many, many occasions because I've learned so much from them, and I continuing to learn. That's one of the great gifts for me about family caregiving. So I want to take just a moment because as I was preparing this, I couldn't help but think of the many people. I thought, where did I begin? Carl invited me to do this. It was something I knew nothing about. And what did I do? I made phone calls. I knew the names of certain people who were doing family caregiving. And one of them had her office right across the street from ours at that time in the Empire State Building. We were on the north side of 34th. She was on 34th and 5th on the south side. Yes, I'm talking about Dr. Carol Levine. And I rang her up and I introduced myself and I went over and I literally sat at her feet and I learned. And I'm so grateful. Then there was a wonderful organization here in New York called the Council of Senior Centers and Services. I was privileged to become involved with them. I ended up on their board. Today it's called Move On New York, and they are doing stellar work under my dear friend Allison Nickerson. Wonderful, wonderful work. But on that original CSCS, as I knew it, were some of the great ladies of healthcare. There was Janet Sainer, that saint who was the commissioner and teacher and professor. All of these people had so many, many titles and places of service. But she was the one who began the Meals on Wheels program during her time as the commissioner. But she understood government. And I can't tell you how many times I rang Janet and I said, Janet, this doesn't make sense to me. And I loved her answer. She said, Greg, do you expect government to make sense? And it gave me a reality check. It also gave me room to say, okay, make that circle wider because this is all part of the reality. There was the marvelous Rose Dobroff, one of the great, great leaders of everything to do with seniors and with caregiving, and a woman who was one of my sponsors when I was very honored to become a fellow at the New York Academy of Medicine. I still have Rose's letter, which she kindly wrote. She was nearing the end of her life, and I called her and spoke with her, and she said, Greg, I want to write that letter. I'm going to send it to you. She said, you'll have to have somebody type it. I said, no problem. But in her frail handwriting, I have her note. To the end, supporting the next generation. Marge Cantor, another brilliant professor teacher. Many of these, I've had the privilege of being part of their memorial services. I think of Gail Gibson Hunt, with whom I wrote originally, Care for the Family Caregiver, A Place to Start. She's the founder of the National Alliance of Caregiving. And now I am thrilled to share they have a new executive director. He is incredible. I'm so impressed with what I've read. I only know him through the computer because I'm not moving around that well, but he and I are having a wonderful conversation, and I look forward to working with him and meeting him in person and perhaps offering my shoulders on which to stand, because now I realize I've joined that group of people. I stood on their shoulders and I continue to stand up. I continue to learn. And people are going to be doing that with you. That is one of the gifts of family caregiving. We may not think of it that way. But through what we've been through, we didn't go through it, we grew through it. Kicking and screaming, yes, you may, perfectly. Judging yourself, going crazy at times. But people will learn from what you experience. Now, many of you know that I've had many, many people who have been on these programs that I have done with Emblem and so forth. And the amazing thing is that most of their work, most of their organizations grew out of the fact that they were a family caregiver who discovered something that was not available. There was something lacking. And they found that piece and they put it together and then shared it with the rest of us. Pieces of you and pieces of me put us all back together. Each of us, our systems, our situations can be quite different and yet very much alike. So I want you, first and foremost, a gift of family caregiving is it allows us to offer our shoulders to those who are coming along. Because every day, someone wakes up, someone discovers, yeah, I'm a family caregiver. As Mrs. Carter said, only 4 types of persons in the world. Those of us who are caregivers today, those of us who have been caregivers, those of us who will be caregivers, and those of us who will be cared for, as I am being right now by so many of you and my precious husband. We learn so much through this journey. A second thing is we learn the healthcare system, as confusing and as difficult as it can be. And what else do we learn? We learn about the system and we learn we must be the advocate. We must ask questions. We mustn't worship at the altar of hospitals or doctors or nurses. We respect. We respect always. But we ask and respect and honor our questions. And when something doesn't make sense, we ask. And we have the right to expect an answer. That is a dialogue. And we need to keep all 3 parts of the healthcare system, the care recipient, the professional caregivers, and the family caregivers, in dialogue, in conversation, and respect one for the other. We learn how to be an advocate. Also, we learn about resources. And there is one resource in particular that I want to add to the many that I've talked about in this 8-week series. And that is the Area Agencies on Aging, AAA. And I'll never forget when I came into this world of healthcare and caregiving, I had come from 25 or 30 years in tourism all over the world. And AAA, that was where you went to find a trip. To me, American Automobile Association, but at that time they were major travel agencies as well. And I get into the healthcare system and suddenly everybody's talking about AAA. And I said, why would you go to a travel agent to get healthcare? Well, that wasn't what it was. It was the Area Agency on Aging. And it's a fabulous organization out of Washington. You simply type in Google Area Agency on Aging and up pops a very inclusive website that asks first and foremost for the zip code of your care recipient. And you place that zip code in there and then tons of very valid and up-to-date information comes. So this becomes very, very helpful when you are trying to help someone who is your care recipient but doesn't live. For example, if they're not here in New York. I'm in New York. Well, I know how to pick up the phone and a lot of those sorts of things. My mother and father were in Wisconsin, outside of Milwaukee. Wherever people might be, the Area Agencies on Aging are the first step to go, because it tells you who is there, and from them you can learn other people who are part of that area and the resources that are available. So I again tell you, Area agencies on aging. Don't forget that one. Also, you have learned, and I have learned with each and every caregiving experience, and I think this is probably one of the most important, that by grace, we truly can do a lot more than we think we can. I can't begin to tell you how many caregivers who have told me their stories who said, I didn't possibly think I could do that. I didn't possibly think that I was capable of doing that. I'd had such a bad relationship. How could I possibly do that? Well, you did it one day at a time. You accepted right where you were. You took what you knew today and you did it to the best of your ability. And then you continued to learn. And when you knew how to do something better, you did it. What a powerful, powerful gift that is. And in doing that, as we talked about when we talked about the spiritual particularly, we began to go deeper within us. We went for resources and support and help all out here. Yes, we did. But when we didn't know where to go, we could be still and go within to that divine, to the universe, to the spirit, to the great spirit, to God as you understand that word, and say, I need help. What am I supposed to do? And for many of us, there were times we learned there was nothing we were to do. What do I mean by that? We're not God. We're caregivers. We are asked to be present for the present. Curing was not going to be part of this story. And so we were asked to walk with, to be present, and to love. Because love never ends. And one of the great gifts of all of that is it allows us to be present in a very peaceful and positive way. And when we are peaceful and positive, our care recipient mirrors that. Many of them can't talk. Many of them have communication issues. And of course they're filled with fear. You would be too. I would be. But when we can transmit the namaste from in me to the namaste within them, what a gift. We're not changing anything. We're not resolving anything. We're not doing miracles. But I think the miracle is we're there for one another. And in many cases, lives that had no connection for most of the earthly experience find some deep and often quiet peace. And it's a peace that allows peace for each partner. For the care recipient, peace as they let go of the human life. And peace for the care recipient, knowing they were present, knowing that the person for whom they were caring was not alone. And they know that they are not alone. Because through this experience, they've met other caregivers, a support group. They've found other friends who are in the same area. And that is without question the great, great gift. And in a very practical sense, what did you get? What was a gift out of doing family caregiving? I hope that you've made good lists of what you want done for you when the time comes for you to have a family caregiver. It's very, very important, from very practical things to documents. We've talked about documents that need to be done, about making certain that people know what your wishes are, that you have designated and asked someone to be with you. That may change, of course, as time goes on, but there's nothing better than planning and making note of it. It's something I always talk about over at the church. This may sound like a strange thing, but I will have many of the seniors, because I'm one of them and have been privileged to be a minister to them for many, many years. And they'll say, well, when the time comes, I want you to blah, blah, blah. And I will always say, please make an appointment with the executive minister, because they're the ones who run everything that's going, and tell them of your wishes. We only want to do what people would like, certainly as clergy. But we need to know, what items do you want included? What don't you want included? What would you like the focus to be? Those are all important documents as well. So there's a whole range of things, because you experienced them caring for someone else. What did you go crazy looking for with someone else simply because no one knew where that item was, whether it's a medication, whether it's phone numbers of doctors, whether it's a particular document that's needed? All of these things are extremely important, and they can be solved by you remembering what you went through. So I urge you to be very attentive to that. And most of all, be grateful. Surrender, knowing that you have done the best you possibly can. And take time to be grateful that you could do what you've just done for another human being. Because if there's anything this world needs, it's a world filled with family caregivers, families of origin, families of choice. If every person adopted one person, we wouldn't be talking about wars. We'd be spending time talking about love and caring. And we can do that. There are some very big shifts going on in the world. I still have great faith in it. And I have even greater faith in our young people. I am so thrilled when I have the privilege of working with them. The other day, I was with a group of young people. Every one of them is interested in some area that is caregiving, whether it's mental health, and that's a very big passion for a lot of young people. I also have been with a lot of young people in the recovery world. Years ago, it was only people like me. Now people are coming in their teens and 20s. What a gift. They're going deeper. They're not worried about building a container to grab and get and hold for the ego. They're willing to say, I've built a container. I have a container. But within the container are the answers that I need to understand and to hear. I need to go deeper from the ego to the essence. I'm going to conclude this broadcast by reading something that I wrote back in 2007. We had, with Emblem Health, once again, they had created a fabulous platform for New York City, the New York City Family Caregiver Coalition of 300 and some organizations. And each year we would do a gala, and we would honor certain very wonderful people who have been very significant in the world of family caregiving. And it would be a beautiful party, and it would be lovely speeches and timed appropriately, and people had a wonderful time together. And I chaired that for many years, and I always liked to end it with something special. And in 2007, I hadn't written that something special yet. So about an hour before everything was to begin, I went to my desk in my private office, and this is what I wrote. And I still believe it. We are. We are truly diverse and inclusive. We are women and men, black and white, and all shades in between. We are straight and gay. We are Christian, Jews, Muslims, Buddhists, agnostics, and I hope a few atheists. It keeps us all growing. We are from all over the world. We are New Yorkers, one and all, by birth or adoption. We are family caregivers. We are big business, government, and nonprofits. We are researchers and center leaders. We are formal caregivers and family caregivers. And we are learning to talk to one another. We are finding a common language and moving the dialogue forward. We are planning new and exciting conversations. We are about seniors caring for seniors. We are about seniors raising grandchildren. We are about children caregivers and so many more faces of family caregiving. We are about gays and lesbians facing end-of-life issues in the middle of life. We are about people with chronic conditions. We are family caregivers and we care. We are rich. We are poor. But we are all extremely wealthy with love, caring, and compassion. We are channels for one another and for others. We are channels of goodness and love. We are not going through life. We are growing through life. We are not human beings trying to have a spiritual experience. No, we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And we are sharing the caring. To each of you, I say thank you, thank you, thank you. And as we always say, onward in love and caregiving. Namaste. God bless, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you.